So hey, welcome back. We're gonna talk now about how to create a pretty basic recipe. Again, Italian cooking. It's a risotto. Risotto is made with an arborio rice or carnaroli rice. It's a short, fat grain rice with a lot of starch on the outside. It's also made with broth. You can use, you can make this vegetarian by using a vegetarian broth. I tend to use the chicken broth. And then also a good quality Parmesan cheese. Important thing about Parmesan is don't use the variety of cheeses that are going to come in a shaker can, because that's got a lot of other starch and various other drying agents in it. It does not melt well and it does not mix well, okay? So get yourself a good piece of Parmigiano Reggiano, okay? That is the 2-year aged Parmesan cheese from Italy. It's exceedingly good. It's not much more expensive than the regular Parmesan cheese, and it lasts just about forever in your refrigerator. So let's talk a little bit about ingredients. We tend to keep around here basic things so you can make a meal almost any time of day or night. One thing we keep a lot of is we keep some rice, okay? We keep onions and garlic, okay? Things that keep really well, okay? Let's look in here and see what else we got, right? Anchovies. Now, not everybody likes anchovies, but there are some Italian dishes and other dishes that require them. They also keep really well. Canned clams, linguine and clams. Various kinds of soups used for stocks and bases and things like that. Always keep around a little bit of cornstarch, very useful for thickening things up. Boxes of rice, pasta, things like that. A lot of dry goods, stuff that lasts for a long time. You don't have to worry about it going bad on you. Very useful. So this dish, pretty straightforward. We're going to grate up some cheese. We have about maybe a little over a cup of cheese. You can vary that. You can go anywhere from a half a cup. You can put no cheese, but it's usually better with cheese. Everything's better with cheese. We're gonna just put this aside for right now. The cheese goes in at the very end, after everything else is done. Next thing we're gonna do is we're going to cut ourselves up an onion. So there's lots of ways to cut onions. Everybody seems to have their own particular way. I'm gonna show you my way. Straightforward, cut it down the center, okay? Peel it. This is of course where the most hassle comes from. It all depends on, if you're like my mother, you don't want to throw away any onions, so you spend a lot of time peeling every last piece of the paper off. In my case, I just take the outer layer of the onion off because it makes it a lot faster. Please don't tell my mom, because she'll say, why am I wasting so much of that onion? All right, so then what I usually like to do is, in this case, you don't have to mince it very fine, but what I usually do is do this with it, which is cut it into segments, straight up and down, holding each one. I got it like that. And then from this point, it's just cut through. Now you notice I keep my fingers back and I hold it with my fingernails. And then at the end, we're gonna just do that, and that one's done. Okay. Some people will keep their onions in the refrigerator so that you don't cry as much when you're cutting them. Like tomatoes, onions lose flavor in the refrigerator. So a lot of times it's best keep your onions and tomatoes out of the refrigerator, because cold destroys the flavor of those fruits and vegetables. Especially true of tomatoes. Don't put tomatoes in the refrigerator, use them. Okay, so we're gonna give this a quick chop. Okay, there we go. So now, in order to make a good risotto, you need a heavy bottom pan. So let's talk for a second about pots and pans. This is a good one for risotto. It's wide, heavy bottom, cast iron. If you're really basic on your cooking, then I would suggest you need effectively one pan, like a 12-inch heavy bottom skillet, and you need a large pot, something you can boil pasta in, and reality is you need some kind of a pan for other things. So that's pretty much it. So those three right there are actually plenty for, that would be probably 90% of my usage of pans would be those three, okay? Very simple. You don't need to buy a lot of big pans. We have a lot of pans up here because we've been here for 30 years, and also because we tend to have big parties where I need more pans, okay? But if you're by yourself, you're not making a lot, those three are all you really need. Now, what I tend to like is get the ones that have, you notice these are all stainless steel, first of all. I don't tend to use a lot of the Teflon coated pans because it's too much hassle trying to keep them from getting scratched up. If you cook right with these, stainless steel works great. They last forever. This pan is approximately 20 years old, okay? And it's still pretty much as good as the day I bought it. They're multi-layered, first of all. They're stainless steel on the outside, okay? And then they're an aluminum core that's bonded together. Very useful because it distributes heat really quickly, but the stainless steel is non-reactive. It doesn't react with your food, which means stuff scrapes off really easily. So with these kind of pans, if you're searing or doing something hot, the best thing is let the food cook. Most people have trouble with these kind of pans because they try to turn things too much. Like if you're frying chicken or something, or cooking something, or searing it, let it cook until it's got a nice crust on it. That way when you slide the spatula underneath it, you break the crust loose from the pan. It comes off very cleanly. If you try to flip it too soon, you're going to find out that, well, it hasn't cooked enough, and the thing is going to be stuck to the pan awfully. So, but also when you cook with these, put a little nice coating of oil on them before you start cooking. So while the pan's still cold, put a coating of oil on it, and you'll find that these work quite well. But we're going to use our heavy bottom pan here. Like most everything else I do when I'm cooking around here is we're going to use olive oil. So we're going to just put some olive oil in the pan here, drizzle it in there, okay, and then we're going to get our onions. Okay. So now, with risotto, it's important that we do not brown the onions. So again, onions like garlic have three distinct flavors. There's fresh onions, like you might use in a salsa. There's sauteed onions, like we're going to use in the risotto. And then there's caramelized onions that you might use for other things, like a hoagie. Okay, so we're going to let that heat up and cook. If you watched our last segment, we made a pasta sauce. So you'll see that over here, you'll see that we've got the pasta sauce cooking. You'll see it's still got quite a bit of water on top of it. That means it ain't ready yet. So we're going to let it sit there and continue to cook. Okay. This is our pan. We got some hot water in here. This is about 2.5 cups. We're going to make 1 cup of rice with 2.5 cups of liquid, which is going to be the chicken broth in this case. I tend to use this brand. This did very well at a competition with Cooks Illustrated. It doesn't have any MSG or any other chemicals. It just has basically just chicken. Okay, so 2.5 cups would be about 2 teaspoons, although I tend to not like it as chickeny, so I tend to use a little bit less than 2 teaspoons. We're going to mix that in here. You can also buy the boxed broth. Again, I tend to use this because I don't have to worry about it going bad. I keep it in the refrigerator. I use it as much as I need, and if I don't use it for 3 months, it doesn't go bad. So this way, whenever I'm doing something, I've got my chicken broth ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to give those a little stir. Okay, again, we're not going to brown them. We're just going to let them saute until they're a little bit translucent. Okay. Okay, so our rice, again, arborio rice, carnaroli. Typically you're going to find arborio. Arborio is pretty much a standard in the United States as far as risotto rice is concerned. You'll notice that it's very fat, short grains of rice. You can't use, don't even try to use regular like white rice, because regular white rice is going to just come completely apart when you cook it that much, and then you try to work with it and make the risotto. So this is going to get approximately 1 cup. Our rice is looking pretty, our onions are looking pretty good. You can just, if you need to make more, you can make more. 1 cup of rice here plus the onions is good for about, as a side dish, it's good for about 4 people. If I had more than that, I would just bump it up from there. So we're gonna pour the rice into the onions. And we're gonna cook the onions and the rice together. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna cook this until you'll notice the rice grains will get a little bit translucent on the edges as they absorb some of the oil. So you notice that the onions are getting a little translucent now, which is good. Just as a tip on cooking, I tend to cook with high heat at first because the food, in this case the onions, have a lot of water in them. So you can cook with high heat at first, and then as things start to lose their water, they'll start to brown. At that point in time, you can turn the heat down. That makes things go a little faster. Okay, so this looks pretty good. If you take a look at that, you'll see the rice grains have got a little bit of a translucent edge on them. Okay, we'll let that cook a second longer. And then over here are, now it's important that this be hot, okay? We don't want to put cold broth into the risotto. So if you buy a box broth, then make sure you put it in a pan and let it heat up first, almost to boiling. You do not want it to be cold, okay? All right, so now that we have this, we're gonna get a ladle. And this is the part you don't really want to rush this. You want to basically make the risotto somewhat slowly, so we're going to take a ladle full at a time, and we're going to put some in there, and we're going to let the rice absorb it. And we're going to keep doing this. As soon as it absorbs, we're going to put a little more. This is where I might turn the heat up a little bit. Okay. And then we're going to come back in a few minutes when this is done.